more members to join pero parang natatagalan naman. So maybe we can just start. So how is your CSS?
Medyo okay, Master.
Okay naman. Have you tried animations, transitions,
Not yet, sir.
transformations, di ba?
Never.
Why did you not try to experiment on it? Si Kingston, parang, are you trying to experiment?
Exploring lang, sir.
Exploring. Yeah, because actually that part is exciting sa animation in CSS. Although it should be good to discuss, pero since medyo kapos tayo sa oras, I decided not to discuss anymore and just discuss the core requirements for the CSS, especially the box style and then the other utilities for CSS, especially the selectors. Uh, so meron kayong question regarding CSS? Entire screen. Is it entire screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
For example, sir, kasi ako ma-image, sir. Then, iji ba nga image, sir, kay ubalin nga kasi ako iji na sir, kay ikanti box na then mai-move around mo.
JImage?
Wait, ay, sorry, sir. Kas lang ko. Basta ako ma-tikwa, sir, kay dati avatar, sir, kasi, tawag nan, iji nga avatar, sir, kay ikanti box sa DJ ko. iji ima na. Then mabalin mo pa nga may move around the digits if for example mouse the or maybe arrow key.
If using arrow keys or mouse, pwede mo siyang i-move but you need to capture the events using JavaScript. Kasi the only events that we can capture with CSS is by using the pseudo selectors, which is the hover, active, the visited. Yun lang kasi yung mga parang nakaka-capture natin yung events. Although not totally capturing, we can provide CSS based on those events, based on those selectors. But we are limited to those. Unlike if you are going to use JavaScript, you can almost capture every event that is happening in that browser, in that web page. Okay? But you can capture the events from JavaScript, but you can also do you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Parang,
Yes.
parang nakamute. Anyway, so yan. You can capture the events, but you
Yeah.
can also do the animation in CSS. Here's another example of a simple CSS loader. So while the page is loading, while the other elements are loading, you can present that screen and let the audience, let the visitor look at that screen while the other parts of your website are loading. Okay? So yan, example of CSS animations. Sure if meron tayong animation dito. Other examples, if you have visited some websites that while you scroll, may mga gumagalaw na elements. Okay? These are some examples of where your CSS animations could be used. Any other questions regarding CSS?
Wala na po sa answer.
Yes. Ang position ti objects. Anya kano ti best way pang position ti objects? Um, what do you mean pang position? Depende kasi kung saan natin ipoposition yung object. Do you want your object to be like using margin or tables? Usually ginagamit lang natin ang table for displaying a table. The reason being is when you use tables for layouting the whole web page, it will take time to load the whole table. Usually, contents of the table will only show once all the contents are loaded. So you cannot show a progressive display of the elements if you are using table. Table kasi ang ginagamit dati nung mga bago-bago pa ang HTML to position the elements nicely. Like for example, they want to create two columns. They're going to create a table with one row and two columns. Pero now we are not going to use that. We will only be using tables for displaying a real table. Okay? Have I answered your question, Mr. Arconado? So we will be using margins. Margins, padding, uh, percentages. We're going to set the width, the dimension of the objects. So any other question? Before we move to today, we will be discussing Bootstrap. May question pa ba from the other members of the class? Okay, good question, Handay of JS. Magja-JavaScript tayo, pero actually baka sa finals na, together with PHP in MySQL. Are you excited to discuss JavaScript? Although a Bootstrap will be using JavaScript, but I decided to discuss Bootstrap first before JavaScript para minsanan na lang tayo sa layouting before we do to some scripting. We will be discussing Bootstrap for, although they are almost similar in a way, but since Bootstrap first newer, doon na tayo sa mas bago. Front end ang focus sa Boodle. Okay. Sige. Front end ang focus. Don't worry, Bootstrap first also for front end. Medyo maghintay-hintay na lang para sa ibang classmates. Okay ba, Mr. Kabudol? Yep. Okay. So kung wala na tayong questions regarding CSS, I think it's time to move to Bootstrap 4. Okay, so ano ba si Bootstrap 4? Have you heard of Bootstrap before? I mean, there are several definitions or descriptions of what is Bootstrap. But the Bootstrap that we will be discussing here is the front-end framework developed by Twitter. I mean, developed by the engineers from Twitter. Okay, so what is Bootstrap? It is a free front-end framework for faster and easier web development. Bootstrap includes HTML and CSS-based design templates for typography, forms, buttons, tables, navigation, modals, image carousels, and many other, as well as optional JavaScript plugins. Bootstrap also gives you the ability to easily create responsive designs. So I think I have discussed this before, the responsive web design and the mobile first web design. So, but to review, responsive web design is about creating websites which automatically adjust themselves to look good on all devices from small phones to large desktops. Okay, so they automatically adjust. So ayan, you may have seen this earlier na this is by four columns, and then once we switch to a mobile view, we will have a single column only to display them nicely, and then we may have elements that only shows on the mobile devices. And also notice that our menu is already different from that of the desktop view. So this is by designing your web page as a responsive web page. Okay? So si Bootstrap kasi um it's a library, JavaScript and CSS library already created for you to easily style or easily do responsive design. Okay? So, gaano ba siya kadaling gamitin? Okay, or let's check this. Why use Bootstrap? The advantages. It's easy to use. Anybody with just basic knowledge of HTML and CSS can start using Bootstrap. Responsive features. Bootstrap responsive CSS adjusts to phones, tablets, and desktops. Mobile first approach. So in Bootstrap, mobile first style are part of the core framework. Meaning we design first for mobile devices and then we adjust for larger screens. And then browser compatibility. It's compatible to all modern browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer 10 Plus, Edge, Safari, and Opera. Just in case you will need to support Internet Explorer 8 to 9, you can always use Bootstrap 3. Hindi rin naman sila masyadong nagkakalayo. So, how to use Bootstrap or where to get Bootstrap for? There are two ways. By using Bootstrap in your website, either by including Bootstrap from a CDN or a content delivery network, or by downloading Bootstrap 4 from getbootstrap.com. This is their official website. So if you're going to use CDN, if you don't want to download, by the way, who knows what is CDN or what's the advantage of a CDN? Okay. Anyone from the class who is familiar with CDN or who have a knowledge of CDN? Ano nga ba ang CDN? Hello? Anyone? Okay, CDN. Yes. No idea. CDN or Content Delivery Network. Ayan, it refers to a geographically distributed group of servers that work together to provide fast delivery of internet content. Ito nga. Okay, let's try to as we have discussed before, everything that you include or everything that you use in your website, in your web page, will be downloaded. That includes all your images, your JavaScript files, your CSS, external CSS files, the whole document itself, the whole web page itself. It will be downloaded from the server. Okay? Uh, Example is this. Let me just reload para makita natin yung mga nada-download. Okay. So these are the files that are downloaded from the server. The document itself, Bootstrap, Font Awesome, Slick, Slick Theme, Lightbox, Animate, Bootstrap, Datetime Picker, Sections, Default, Image Grid, custom, and then the images, all the images, and then the JS files. Okay, and then if you need loading and so on, the fave icon. Okay, so these are the files downloaded for this page only. So imagine kung gaano kadami yung dinownload natin for this page. And this is the time that it took for each files to be downloaded. So kung mapapansin nyo, yung iba, nag-start lang silang nag-download after ma-download yung ibang components. Okay? Now, anong gamit ni CDN? So a CDN is a content delivery network or content distribution network. They are computers or servers that stores a copy of those files. So as we have seen here is geographically distributed network of proxy servers. Meaning, for example, we have a CDN for Bootstrap. One server may be located in the Philippines in order to cater the needs of Bootstrap in the Philippines. Okay? Instead na, for example, nasa US yung main server, instead na magpo-pull tayo lahat, magda-download tayo lahat from US, this CDN are geographically distributed so that we will be downloading from a nearer location so the data can travel faster, can reach our side faster rather than traveling from a farther location. Okay? And we also have multiple copies of those files in the different servers. So another advantage of the CDN is that you don't have to store your copy of the file. Okay, you don't have to store a copy of your file in your own server. That minimizes the disk usage, and it also minimizes the need to store update an updated copy of your file. Okay? So, gano'n ba kasi ka-importante yung disk space na yan? So, ayan. Just to share with you, last night at around 10, kailangan kong mag-online at kailangan kong mag-fix ng ginawa naming website just because it reached this space limit. So may mga tickets na hindi nag-generate because of that. So at around 10 to 12 midnight, I have to spend around 2 hours just because na full yung disk ng server namin. So yan, by using CDN, you will also minimize the use of your disk space. And then another advantage of using CDN is that browsers do cache files. Okay? So for example, going back to this website, if we are using Bootstrap from a CDN, it will, since we loaded this website, this web page, Bootstrap will already be downloaded and it may have been cached by our browser. So, for example, we have another website using Bootstrap. Let's say, we have another website using the same file using Bootstrap. Okay, this website will no longer have to download Bootstrap since you have already loaded Bootstrap from the same location in this web page. Then loading this web page will no longer need to download Bootstrap from the same location. Okay, so that's the advantage. Another advantage of CDN, since multiple websites might be using the same CDN for Bootstrap, then your website will have the advantage of loading faster. Okay, because it's already cached in your browser. Okay, so nakuha ba yung advantage ng CDN natin? So in order to use Bootstrap, you will need to have three files. That's the Bootstrap CSS itself, jQuery. jQuery is a lightweight JavaScript library that provides useful functions for scripting with JavaScript. And also it provides polyfill for um, older browsers. If we say polyfill, they are the functions that are created in order to convert a newer function for older browsers that does not support those functions yet. Okay, so for now, pwede nating sabihin, okay, jQuery is a JavaScript library. And it's needed by Bootstrap, so we need to include it in our web page in order to use Bootstrap. So first, we need the CSS. Okay, nandun na. Next, we need to use jQuery. Next, we need to use Pupper.js. Pupper.js is uh, for the pop out elements like pop up or pop over and tooltip. And then, of course, the Bootstrap library itself. Okay, so notice that we are all getting these files from CDNs. Just in case you don't want to get from CDN, for example, you may want to develop locally without internet connection, you can always download from getbootstrap.com. So here you will be downloading a zip file which contains folder for CSS. So for your development, you can just include bootstrap.min.css and then bootstrap.min.js. So nakabundle na kasi yan. Or you can also use bootstrap bundle.min.js. Uh, jQuery is not included yet, so you may want to download from jQuery.com. So download jQuery 3.5, should be okay. So yan, download the compressed production jQuery. This is the jQuery.min. Pwede nyo siyang i-save as. So yan. And then gamitin nyo lang siya sa web page ninyo. Let me save this. So yan. Any question on how to use Bootstrap? or how to get Bootstrap? So it says here,
For,
Bootstrap for use jQuery and Pepper.js for JavaScript components like modals, tooltips, popovers, etc. However, if you use the CS part of Bootstrap, you don't need them. Yes, my question?
sa jQuery na part,
Mm-hmm.
concern, medyo medyo nag-stick kasi yung PC ko kanina kaya hindi ko nakita kung ano yung ginawa mo sir.
Uh, Maybe the downloading?
Yes sir.
Yeah, punta lang kayo dun sa jQuery.com and then just click on download. Download jQuery. And then here, download the compressed production. Should be okay since you're not going to modify or understand jQuery from this file. So pag compressed production kasi they try to remove all possible white spaces, yung mga enter characters, new line characters, spaces, and so on. So yan ang compressed version natin. Usually sa iisang line lang talaga ng code yan if your editor supports just a single line of code, then it's just one line. So hindi mo siya makikita as how you see in the browser. Narap na kasi kay browser kaya ganito itsura. Okay? So yun lang naman for the jQuery. So any other question?
Fine sir.
Okay, so Bootstrap 4, since it's a mobile first, ensure to include this for proper rendering and touch zooming. So add lang natin na. Okay, and then we have containers. So Bootstrap 4 also requires containing element to wrap site contents. There are two containers to choose from. We have container and container fluid. So the container class provides a responsive fix with container, whereas the container fluid provides a full width container spanning the entire width of the viewport. Okay? Yung container kasi natin, it is fixed width. So if in the larger the screen we have, it tries to create a margin. Okay? It tries to create a larger margin for the sides so that the content will still be inside the container, which has the fixed width. Whereas the container fluid, it's like a fluid that it adjusts based on the screen size. Okay? So it depends on your need. You may want to use container or container fluid. This is for the parent container. Okay, you may want to wrap the whole website with a container or a container fluid element. Any question?
Done, sir.
So for fixed width container or the container itself, the max width will change on different screen sizes. For extra small, it's less than 576px. It will be 100%. For greater than or equal to 576px, it will be 540. For medium, 720px. For large, 960px. And for extra large is 1140px. So your fixed container will still change size depending on the container, depending on the screen size. Okay? So, hindi naman siya fix na fix. It also changes, but it depends only on screen sizes. And we categorize screen sizes based on extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. Extra small, meron bang discussion dito ng screen sizes? Okay. So in Bootstrap, if you don't specify the screen width or the width of the element or of the column, you are specifying for extra small devices. Like for example, pag sinabi mo rito, okay, all P color gray. Okay, all P will be colored gray. Pag sinabi mong ganyan, meaning you are specifying for extra small devices. And all other, since it's mobile first, and all other devices. Okay? Or if you specify here div.row, div.col. This column is for extra small devices and all other larger devices. Yun ang principle ng mobile first design natin. Okay? If you don't specify the size. Okay, we now go to grade basic. So the principle, Bootstrap is based on the principle of the grid system. Basically, we have 12 columns. Ito siguro yung isang hinahanap mo kanina, Mr. Sino bang naghanap? Si Mr. Arconado. So anyway, positioning objects. Okay. So ayan. We can easily do that using Bootstrap. Okay, this is a table-like style, but it's using columns. It's using div actually, or other elements instead of using table. So in this way, pwedeng mag-load yung ibang div, pwedeng mag-show na yung ibang div without the other divs having to be downloaded or finish downloading. Okay? So yan. Our Bootstrap grid system consists of 12 columns across the page. If you don't want to use all columns individually, you can group the columns together to create wider columns. So we have all in all 12. You cannot exceed 12. Okay? In order to use, for example, use for span, you are going to span the column in 4 or span in 3. Okay, this is how you lay out. Span 4, span 8, or span 6 for 50-50 distribution. So these are the grade classes, but the columns should be wrapped in a row. So we have call, that call, and then dash the number. This is for extra small devices and up. Okay, and then call SM for small devices, call dash MD for medium devices, LG, and then XL. Hmm? Okay, what if for example, madaming scenery C. So yan, in order to use columns, you need to wrap them inside rows. The reason being is that rows create a negative margin in order to fit the columns nicely. So leave that column. Okay, for example, you want to create a sidebar. Lagyan natin, this is sidebar, this is main. So yan, sidebar, it's taking 1/3 of the whole width, and then main, it's taking 2/3 of the whole. Okay. So para makita natin, si sidebar, yan. And si main, yan siya. Okay. Uh, ang kaibahan nito is that if you resize, it will always maintain 4/8 distribution. So what if, for example, for smaller screens, you want to make them top-bottom layout? Okay, in that case, you may want to set call MD dash 4 and call MD dash 8. In that case, you will only have 4/8 distribution for medium devices and up. So medium, large, and extra large. For small and extra small devices, it will be top and bottom layout. So as you can see, si sidebar nasa top, si main nasa baba. And then as we increase the size, for medium devices, your sidebar is already in the side. It's already a 4/8 distribution. Pwede mo rin gawing na for call MD, it's 5/7. Just in case you want to have a larger sidebar. And then call dash LG dash 4. Call dash LG dash 8. So yan, this is 5/7, and then once you hit large screen, it will become 4/8. Any question?
Nice.
This might be your need for the positioning. Okay. Take note of the bootstrap grid. Once you declare, you always start from small device. Take note, always take note that bootstrap is mobile first. Okay. Once you set for call MD, for example, you set medium devices, small devices or smaller devices will not be affected. It will only affect from that size up, okay, from medium to extra large. And then if you define again another set for large devices, it will also affect large and up or large and extra large. You may still want to define XL here depending on your need. Okay? Okay, next. What if, for example, we want, where's the offset? Okay, so you can also define three equal columns by just using col. I mean equal columns by defining column that will create three equal, or if you want two equal, then you can define two columns here. Responsive columns, unequal responsive. Okay, what if, for example, you want to display, hey, gusto mong mag-display lang doon kay dun sa tapat ni main and you have nothing to display in line with the sidebar. You can offset. You can offset in Bootstrap. Like for example, div call offset md with 5. You so you define the size of the column and then you define the size of the offset. In that case, it will offset from left 5 span or 5 columns. Okay? So nag-offset siya ng 5. Any question regarding the grid? Hello?
None, sir.
Yan. Okay, now we go to ganun lang kadali actually ang paggamit ng Bootstrap. You just add classes. to your existing elements. Okay, typography. For example, H1 to H6, they will automatically set sizes like 2.5 rem, 2 rem, 1.5 rem, and so on. So in display heading, display 1, 2, 3, and 4, we also have small or smaller and lighter text. Mark is used to highlight, abbreviation, black quote, and so on. And then we have colors. So in Bootstrap, we have a limited set of colors that are used. So we have contextual classes that can be used to provide meaning through colors. Okay, always take note of this contextual classes: muted, primary, success, info, warning, danger, secondary, white, dark. And then for text, we have body and like. So, but for primary, success, info, warning, danger, secondary, white, and dark, we can also use them for background and for buttons, for borders. So these are our contextual classes for text. So madali lang mag-color ng text sa Bootstrap if you only need these colors. For example, you just need to show an error text, for example. So you just set the class of the element to be text danger. For example, you want to create here this, that is an error. Okay. You want to color it red, just add class text danger. Okay. And Bootstrap will automatically color it based on what is the danger text color set. Okay. And then for example, div success. Okay, sabihin mo lang dyan, class text. Okay, and it's already green. So tables, you will also easily create tables, easily style your tables by using the table utility classes. Just set the table class, and then if you want stripe rows, you can just use table stripe, bordered table, table bordered, hover rows, yan, table hover, and then dark table, first table dark, dark stripe, overall dark, borderless. You need to use contextual classes. Just set the tr class. So yan, table primary, table success, table info. And then we go to images. 10:5. Maybe we stop by 10:30. So in Bootstrap, you can also easily style images. You can have rounded corners. You just add the class rounded, and then circle or thumbnail. You can also set an image to automatically fill the whole container by using image fluid. So for responsive images, you set image fluid. The image will automatically resize itself to 100% depending on the size of the container. And then Jumbotron is for creating text, big text in gray boxes for extra attention. And then alerts. So yan, for showing alerts, for maybe showing a success message, a failed message, an information or warning. Okay. Buttons, you can easily create buttons in Bootstrap 4 using the BTN class and then the contextual classes for buttons. So button classes can be used on a button or input elements. Let's just try a quick example for buttons. For example, you want to create a button. You may want to make a link button to look like a button. So a just for example, just getting to top and then top. So in your button, just add a class btn dash primary. So yan, already have button. Okay? So the difference kung walang button, hey, ganun lang kadaling gamitin si Bootstrap. Almost just providing classes. Then we have button groups. We have tab here. And you can also create outline buttons by using outline instead of contextual classes. BTN outline and then the contextual classes. And then you can set sizes, small, default, and large. Block level buttons is full width button. The difference between active and disabled. So lagyan mo lang siya ng disabled property and it will already look like ayan, not clickable button. And then buttons with spinner. So lagyan mo lang siya ng span with a class spinner. A spinner border. And then button groups. So button groups are of course group of buttons, but the difference between using button groups with simple button classes only is that button groups are grouped together. Kung mapapansin nyo yung border dun sa side is different from the border ng mga nasa gitna na buttons. Okay, that's your button group. Then we have badges. So, ayan. Groups, cards. Okay, cards. Cards usually for showing some personal details or product details, we use cards. So it's easy to create card in Bootstrap. You just use the class card and then put the contents in card body. You can also put an image image above to have this. And then we have header and footer para meron kayong border. Usually, footer, ginagamit din natin siya for showing the buttons for the card. And then we also have contextual cards. But you can just use the contextual classes B, G, and then the colors. Okay? Model. You can also create models, easily create models in Bootstrap. So to create a model, you just need the model class and then model dialog and then content. It will already create a backdraft of semi-transparent block. And then for triggering the model to show, you will need a button or any other element that has the data toggle property and that data target, data toggle attribute and data target. Just make sure that the data target and the ID of the model are the same. Okay, depending on what model you are going to show, should be placed inside your data target attribute. So to dismiss, for the close button, you just have a data dismiss model button or other element inside your model. Okay? Carousel for carousel. Yan. For forms, inputs, they are also automatically styled. You just have to wrap in a form group and then add the form control. Add a label and add a form control class for your form fields and they will be automatically styled by Bootstrap. Any question regarding Bootstrap? Ang dali nang mag-style, no? Dali nang mag-create ng website. By using
Sir.
Bootstrap. If you need to refer on something, you can always go to getbootstrap.com. They have their own documentation on how to use their components, their layout, their content. Or you can also refer to W3 Schools or other sites that teaches how to use Bootstrap. Kahit ako hindi ko kabisado lahat ng utilities nila, lahat ng classes nila. So most of the time, I always go here to copy their... Ang pinakamadalas kong kopyahin dito is the modal. Kasi sa dami nun, hindi ko talaga siya kabisado and I can just copy and paste and then just change the contents. Pero take note that using Bootstrap alone is not sufficient for every web development. Okay? You may not want to create a website that looks exactly like Twitter or that looks exactly like the default Bootstrap that other sites might be using. You may want to add, or you may want to change the colors of the core bootstrap itself. No, 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 no. This is different. Okay, as you can see here, there are themes for sale that are made from Bootstrap. Okay? So, kung mga papansin nyo, they look different, but they are created from the core Bootstrap itself. So, yan, in order to facilitate the designing your web page faster, you may want to use Bootstrap, but as much as possible, you may also want to tweak or change the colors of Bootstrap. Pero pag nag-change kayo ng colors or nag-change kayo ng whatever you want to change, try not to modify the core library of Bootstrap itself. Okay? I-override nyo using your CSS, your own CSS. Like for example, uh, here, success green, the color here, or I may want to change this. Okay, I may want to change it to a different blue. So I may want to provide another external CSS, or I can put it here, .btn, .btn. For example, I want blue violet for the primary color. So that's how you change the default of Bootstrap. Do not change the bootstrap.min.css. Okay? Just provide a different CSS for your definitions. So any question regarding Bootstrap, CSS, or HTML? Questions from the class? So wala ng question?
Wala po sa akin, sir.
Okay, so I think that will be all for today, for this week. I will be posting dun sa group na lang natin regarding your project for midterms.
Sige, sir.
I will be,
Group,
yes,
group Miji Kosher project.
I think for midterms, it will be individual. Mag-group na lang tayo sa finals. Okay, so that will be all for today. Thank you for joining.